Hi folks, welcome to another edition of the Omnist Hour. I hadn't been planning on talking again so soon after yesterday's, let me turn this down a little bit, after yesterday's foray into time and string theory, but I had a bit of revelation this morning as I was about to awaken, as I was half awake, or I don't know, that in-between state where you get these flashes of brilliance. So I decided I better talk about it today, because this is a big one. If you've been following my channel lately, you'll know that I've mentioned that I've started a book about the history of the multiverse. And I actually wrote about 6 chapters of that book and then kind of got stuck because I was making materials for it and trying to sort out details that I hadn't thought out before, and kind of ran into a roadblock, and something didn't feel right about the narrative I was presenting, so I kind of laid the work aside for a bit and started podcasting again, and singing and doing the normal things I do when I'm needing inspiration, I guess. So I'm not sure how long that's been going on, but if you follow my channel, you might notice a pattern in my podcasts where there will be these big leaps and revelations, and then there will be kind of a steady state of talking about the topics of the day. At any rate, let's talk about today. You'll recognize, maybe, behind me, classic scene, classic still from the movie A Beautiful Mind, one of Russell Crowe's early masterpiece performances about the mathematician. It's a biopic about the mathematician John Nash, who was a Nobel Prize winner that had basically went crazy in the process of digging into his messiah mission, which is mathematics, of course, and game theory, interestingly enough, which is a topic I touch on quite a bit. I talk a lot about the game of souls and how the multiverse is essentially a massive multiplayer bunch of virtual realities that make being a soul fun, no matter how young or how old you are. Okay, so where are we going with this, Rob? You might recognize the background music as the music from, I bet you don't know the composer or the piece, but you may recognize it if you've ever watched the old Alfred Hitchcock Presents show, which was kind of like the forerunner of The Outer Limits and Twilight Zone and everything. Interestingly enough, this piece, I didn't actually know who wrote it or what it was called. And I know now why, because the composer is not exactly one of my favorites. Charles Gounod, kind of a lesser of the French romantic composers, which I guess are featured on this album I've got in the background. At any rate, I want to go there first to kind of set the stage for this before I tell you what we're going to talk about. Bear with me. You know, if you follow my channel, that I sometimes move in mysterious ways, and you have to be patient with me. I want to show you what this piece is. It's actually called Funeral March for a Marionette. Interesting. Now why would, I mean, you can see why musically that would be picked, but that's an interesting title for it, isn't it? And it certainly fits the music, and it kind of fits perhaps the feeling some people have of having their strings pulled, and kind of the Pinocchio theme, which is a meme that I often talk about too. How souls who give up control to a hive mind have no control. They kind of on strings, told what to do, when to do, how to do it. That's kind of the description of the absolute Orwellian government, right? And programming, conditioning can do that to us. Okay, so Funeral March for Marionette. Now, I actually thought of another song that I was thinking about featuring on this episode, so let's go there next, because I kind of like yesterday, starting with a lyric that in a song. Some of you will remember one of the very first psychedelic rock bands back in the day was a band called Jefferson Airplane, whose lead singer was Gracie Slick. This was in my oldest brother's generation. She was like the rock singer that everyone in the Berkeley hippie culture saw as the girl I most want to. At any rate, here's a song she wrote, one of the more famous of their songs. I want to read the lyrics completely because it does relate to this topic extremely closely. The song is called Somebody to Love. Now, I want you to notice something really, really interesting. Let's look at this. So this was released in 1967 on an album called Surrealistic Pillow, implying that in our dream state, this was where she got this album's material. Look at the genre here. Psychedelic rock, that makes sense. Children's music. Who in their right mind would put psychedelic rock in with children's music? Classic rock, rock folk. Okay, let's look at these lyrics. Somebody to love. When the truth is found to be lies and all the joy within you dies, don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better find somebody to love. Love, love. When the garden flowers, baby, are dead. Interesting. Yes, and your mind is so full of red. Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better find somebody to love. Your eyes, I say your eyes may look like his. Yeah, but in your head, baby, I'm afraid you don't know where it is. Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better find somebody to love. Tears are running down. They're all running down your breast. And your friends, baby, they treat you like a guest. Don't you want somebody to love? Don't you need somebody to love? Wouldn't you love somebody to love? You better find somebody to love. Now, this is an interesting song. This is one of their earlier songs, one I think that would kind of was one that got them famous. White Rabbit is probably their most famous song, which is where a lot of other cultural memes come from. And that song obviously is based upon the cultural meme of Alice in Wonderland. We're not going to go into that today, however. The things I want to point out are this: when the garden flowers, baby, are dead. Okay, now how do babies become dead? Well, if you're a singer of a rock band, probably because you got an abortion. Your eyes, I say your eyes, may look like his. Whose? Maybe she's dreaming of this baby that was aborted. and what their eyes would have looked like. But in your head, baby, I'm afraid you don't know where it is. Interesting. There's some stuff going on here that is, you know, most people would listen to this song and they'd groove to the beat and the tune and not really listen to the lyrics. And those that do listen to the lyrics would see it as a feminist fight song, maybe self-loathing song of why do we love babies and why do we love men? And why do we keep wanting to find somebody to love? Okay, I think that's a good intro to what we're going to talk about today. Let me get my title up and tell you that I'm going to title this one, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the BORG, the Cure for Assimilation Madness. Now that's a term you've probably not heard before, but is something I'm going to describe. And I think many scientists, artists, people of great ideas, great ambitions can relate to it. Assimilation madness. Now, what I'm talking about there, if anybody has experienced these flashes of inspiration and brilliance, and you know, this need to get everything on paper, get everything in a song, get everything drawn on canvas before the image fades, you know that this feeling is much akin to a madness, and can drive you to madness. If you've ever had one of these moments and you didn't quite capture everything that came to you, you'll be like, oh, you're so close. I'm just, and there's a frustration there that can drive people to madness. It can drive people to drink. It can crunch up your insides and cause you to become sick, cause you to develop illness, as I think is the case with Stephen Hawking. If you don't know much about Stephen Hawking, he was, in his time before he died, the preeminent, another Nobel Prize winner, I believe, in physics, whose explorations on the edge of science landed him in a wheelchair where he couldn't communicate. And they designed this special wheelchair for him, and a way of allowing him to speak despite his disability. And at the end of his life, he did try to do additional work and make additional contributions, very, very severely handicapped by all that. You can go on and on looking at artists, musicians, composers, Beethoven, for instance, the deafness that eventually drove him nearly insane and made him such a difficult person to get along with. To some extent, Mozart, in his obsession with certain themes that basically drove him to drink, drove him to end up having a very short life. The list goes on and on of suicides and mental incapacitation. Or there's quite a large class of very bright people who will make a contribution and then kind of rest on their laurels and become a mouthpiece of the establishment. I think folks like that come to mind are folks like Michio Kaku, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Carl Sagan, The list goes on and on of folks who go from, being a major contributor in a certain field to being kind of a PR mouthpiece of the establishment and selling a narrative. I'm going to explain what's going on there and also show you some updated slides from my visual aids that I'm preparing for my book because this whole topic caused me to rethink my theory of the creation of everything. So let's go back to those slides and do a little bit of review, and I'm going to try to hit all the changes and explain why the changes are made and what they mean for the message I've been trying to share here. Okay, so just to leave off with where we were yesterday, because I think it's kind of pertinent, the kind of message of time yesterday was that every soul has a time. That time is from the point where it emerges from BORG, from the ultimate hive mind, the creator of souls, basically the constructor that creates AI souls, NPCs for this game. Okay, this is not an active creator. This is an AI creator. It just does its job. Kind of like, your typical public servant in a government organization. I'm just doing my job. The law says blah. And they won't listen to any reason, any sense. They're just going to do their job. Okay, so it begins with, New Soul's life begins with a hole needing to be filled in the multiverse, and no more conscious soul wanting to play that role. Because again, it's a virtual reality. It's a multiplayer virtual reality, and nobody's forced to play. Nobody's forced to take a role. You're offered, okay, there's these roles available. Anybody want this one? Going, gone. Sorry, come on board, give us a soul for that one. Okay, that's the beginning, and the end is basically when you stop playing the game. When do you stop playing the game? When you get re-assimilated into BORG. You go back to the source, which, kind of I've been explaining why this idea of going back to source, going back to the universal one, is maybe not the smartest thing to do. It's basically giving up your individual identity and saying, everything I accomplished in this game, I don't value it. I don't want to continue it. Take it, BORG. Okay, so let's delve now into the changes that were applied by this. And I think that will drive the conversation to where we need it to go. Oops, I got one more change I got to make here. Bear with me till I make it. This isn't going to make much sense. Let's copy Happy AI BORG and put Happy AI BORG here instead of Awakened Soul BORG. And we need to put him there too. Get to see a creator in action. Okay, and yes, I think that is what we needed to do. So let's go back and review the evolution of the multiverse. Okay, in the beginning, God was the only conscious soul that wasn't just an AI running some program that had originated from the mind of God. And as we talked about in the previous slide, God started by not knowing about programming and created Lucifer, who was the first soul that had free will, could develop on its own, do whatever it wants. God didn't know he needed to put limits on other souls. Well, he maybe did to some extent, because he knew he could destroy Lucifer if he ever wanted to, just by unthinking. And, well, we'll not go into there because that raises some questions I don't want to talk about today. At any rate, he started creating AI souls, starting with karma and anti-karma, the BORG. So in the beginning, there was no physical reality, no other spiritual reality than this place of thought. God created these souls, 5 key souls. Well, God was already there and hadn't stopped existing yet. Karma, BORG, Lucifer, and Lilith. This is a special 5-fingered solution, the minimum number of souls it takes to start a multiverse. Karma and BORG were these happy AIs doing what they were supposed to do. Karma collecting what she thought were good ideas, and BORG collecting what he thought were what everybody thought were bad ideas. You don't like something, it makes you uncomfortable, it feels like something you already ate, you give it to BORG. BORG chews it up. BORG will assimilate anything. It's like the universal garbage disposal. Okay, so once you got that set up, then you take a couple of souls. Lucifer volunteered, "Hey God, pick me," because that's how ambitious, favored children are. They want the parent to always choose them, and that they think they're the best ones. And so I was first. I had to deal with one of those in my actually 2 older brothers that were kind of like that. That's why they hated each other, I think. At any rate, Lucifer volunteered for embodying the universe, and the anti-universe was embodied by basically Lucifer and Karma's daughter. So this is how this kind of worked up here. Lucifer thought, okay, God had me as a child and is always treating me badly and always beating me at every thought battle, and it's kind of embarrassing, but I won't feel so bad if I do the same thing. And so Lucifer birthed Lilith and gave her the programming of basically getting all the new data from BORG. So she was always one step behind anything God or Lucifer was thinking of, and would be the dumbest of the Trinity. And of course, these were the only awakened souls at the time. Karma and BORG were still happy little AIs running on their programming, not able to think out of the box that they were given. Okay, so that's how creation began. And other souls that came into being or already were saw this game and started playing. And the ones that were successful playing in the Luciferian universe, where laws were tested and proven became the gods that were more conscientiously creative. And this kind of bubble thing, that means you're a god, a more awakened, not necessarily a full god, but a more awakened soul, more conscious and with more creative ability. The Lilithian universe trained sort of hive mind fantasy loving children. The dreamers, the fiction writers, the science fiction writers, the fantasy writers, who didn't want to be bothered with any laws, any restrictions. They just wanted an open slate. And as you know, that's a very important piece of how we generate these more conscientiously creative children. We feed our children fairy tales. We feed our children fantasy and things that have sort of hidden useful messages in them that they wouldn't pick up on, but they kind of stick as programming. And yes, all of the things we give our children ever since the beginning of civilization are programming. It's not all bad. We have to program them, reinforce programs that encourage our civilization, our community to stay stable. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural inclination to want stability in a civilization. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide and talk about that one. So that was the beginning. During days 1 to 4 of creation, we had basically this machine working to create the laws of physics and chemistry, and in this other universe, the laws of anti-physics and anti-chemistry. In other words, the laws of magic. What magic works, what magic doesn't. What magic images pull you into certain, basically psyops. Magic was a lure to less responsible souls to take the shortcuts to enlightenment, to lure them to become hive mind fantasy loving children, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just raising a different kind of child. Now here's where we get to the 5th day. During all of this, Karma was watching and learning and saying, oh, okay, well, now I understand a lot better how this game works. I understand why these are the good ideas and these are the bad ideas. Not bad in the sense of, we should kill them. We don't kill ideas. We give them to BORG. Nothing gets wasted in creation. That would be stupid. We don't destroy to build back better. We save things in a library. And that's another way you can think of BORG. And that's why some refer to the BORG memory as the Akashic Records. And they have a great desire to get into the Akashic Records and explore, explore, explore. Okay, bear with me. Are you following this? Okay, this is the point at which God felt Karma was ready. Well, actually, BORG was ready to go experience being a real soul, trying out this game himself. Now, oops, I think I might have made a mistake again. I think we need to pull this up here and drop this down here. Okay, so refresher course. When a soul is in any universe, it can't be in any other universe. That applies to all souls, from God to the newest. So at some point, God decided, you know what, Borg, you've been sitting there getting all these bad ideas for so long. I think you deserve to go make some of your own ideas. Play the game yourself. We're going to give you a little break and let you go participate and become more conscious. And so Borg left its last AI version, its save game of all the bad ideas it had up to that point, and came down to play the game personally in either of the universes, because as you know about reincarnation and karma, you get to play in the physical universe for testing, and you get to go to spiritual universes for planning your next incarnation. Okay, so Borg is here playing this game himself. And eventually Borg trains himself up to be a new version of Borg, and comes to basically be the leader of this anti-universe, because Lilith's off playing her games and doesn't want to go back to being just a universal figure. She's having fun jumping around universes, causing trouble as the adversary's chief minion. This is the point at which God lets Karma come a step into the game. Say, Karma, Borg is so successful as the leader of the hive mind, the Borg universe. I think you better come and solve that personally, and you can learn and grow and have your own incarnation experiences. And that left versions of virtual karma governing the whole system. And this is how the evolution of karma started. That's the 6th day of creation, is karma bouncing back and forth, delivering new versions of herself to the multiverse. Okay, now that got us up to about version 11 of karma. And that's when, basically all of the gods realized that they kind of been played for fools by God, because they saw that, well, gosh, every time karma gets to a new version, we get less power. And the souls that we have been lording it over, the little souls, the little people that make all of this possible, they get more power, and we don't like that. So we're not going to vote with God on this one. We're going to hold out, and we're just going to keep things the way they are. We like day 6 rules. We don't want another version of karma. We don't want karma to become a full-fledged senior creator, which is, again, like I tell you, level 12 of consciousness awakening is becoming a full senior creator, having full control over your own universe and the ability to attend the highest heaven if God lets you. Well, so this was the point at which God pulled his final bait and switch. God said, okay, if you will go along with my latest plan to train karma one more level, I will personally go participate in the game. I'll take reincarnation amnesia, and we'll make up this Messiah system. And when I fully wake up, then that will be proof that karma works to even make a better God. And while we're doing that, we'll let the Buddha Borg, who is now fully trained up to level 12, see, Buddha, gets to be promoted. The adversary got promoted back to the highest heaven. Now, the adversary had been trained, and the adversary had basically decided, you know, I don't want to go through all of the Buddhist dogma, but the Buddha's idea of perfection is becoming one with everything, reaching this state of nirvana where you don't need to play the game anymore. That's what Buddha was all about, because that's what got BORG back to a position of power in the highest universe. And this is like, I won, I won! It's so funny because if you think of some of the classic memes of cartoondom, there's this classic character of the dummy who thinks that they're smart. That goes all the way back. He's my friend George. I will name him George, and I will love him. And then there's that dumb fat kid in the Boss Baby series. I mean, wow. So many connections just flash off in my head as I think about this. So this is the BORG. BORG thought that I won, now I control everything, and basically BORG, being the assimilator, the one who wants to pull all the souls into the big loving hive mind, BORG is about love. Oh, if we were all one and we all loved each other, then everything would be perfect. This is BORG thinking. And, you know, it's kind of a good idea on the surface, but it's not a very creative idea, because if you're all one, you're all on the same page, then you don't want any new pages. The book's finished, it's all done, it's all been done before. And this is the theme of Buddhist worshipers, or worshipers of the all-loving one, which includes a lot of Jesus worshipers and God worshipers in other faiths. Well, it's just all about love. That's the only thing that matters. God is love. How many times have you heard somebody say that? They are actually worshiping the Buddha BORG. And that's okay. That's a justifiable position. But it's not a creative position. It creates groupthink. It creates a hive mind. And that's been the agenda of BORG species ever since. They want to make every species into a hive mind, and that's what they're trying to do with humanity. That's what was happening when humanity was created. Humanity was created to be a slave species by a species that was very rigid and hierarchical, kind of like a hive mind. And so there's basically, this is the two poles of the battle. The pole of absolute authoritarian control through Orwellian loving oneness, or asserting your independence and basically working out the boundaries between other species, other worlds, etc., through conflict and resolution of conflicts, negotiation. Not just letting them assimilate you, but working through the differences and maintaining your independence and your free will, free thought. Okay, so where do we go from there? That was day 7. And as we know, day 7 has been pretty challenging, especially because of narratives in the Bible. The Bible says, oh, the 7th day, everything was perfect. We don't need to change anything. God's resting. God was hardly resting during day 7 of creation, let me tell you. This is a BORG narrative. This is what you hear from people that do think everything's perfect because they have the power. They are in control of their civilization, their community, or whatever. And as far as they're concerned, it's all perfect. I got the power. I make the rules. I make the decisions. We're done. Does that sound like anybody near you? Okay, this is where this idea of everything was perfect in 6 days came from. It was not perfect. Karma was still learning and developing. You know, I think at this point we need to maybe change karma. We need to promote her to be a god because she's gotten to a higher level. Bear with me. You'll see method in my madness maybe through my changes. And you know, let's do Borg a favor there. Let's make Borg a demigod at this point. Maybe we should start calling him Buddha Borg there. Okay, maybe that makes more sense. Bear with me. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the gyrations that got Buddha enlightened enough to earn his promotion, which was basically the condition for the end of day 6, was for Buddha, Borg, to reach the highest level. And the promise was that then Borg could be sitting as an equal to God in heaven. And of course, when that happened, that's when Buddha said, "Oh, I'm not going to settle for equal. I'm going to tell everybody not to vote with you and to force you off the island. Because I have so much power. I've assimilated all these souls. I have all this knowledge I've gained while I was incarnating." And of course, God already knew that was going to happen. And God said, "Okay, I'll take the bitter pill of reincarnation amnesia and I'll sign up to all of the conditions for raising. I'll let you destroy the perfect world that we've built without you, Borg. Gaia T-1, the planet called Theia, that existed where the asteroid belt is now, and it was pieces of which became our Earth and the Moon. You can look up, this is a scientific fact, it's been proven very, very conclusively by those that study interplanetary astronomy and so forth, astrophysics. Okay, so let's see. Now, meanwhile, other souls were reaching the level of becoming gods. Well, they were still stuck in this test tube. Remember that this was a series of test tubes, and we kept making the test tubes smaller. This was how God kept selling new phases of the experiment. Okay, and at this point, this is when the Messiah system started. This smallest level of, okay, how does it work? How do we select species, races, people? That was all done. Now we have a specific planet focus, and for these species, races and people, and a specific bloodline chosen. And that bloodline produces Messiah candidates, and out of that could come a fully awakened Messiah. Okay, so this is day 7 of creation. It's been a long, hard day because, as I just alluded to, it dates all the way back to before the destruction of the previous Gaia. this planet where life developed. Life was developed, not evolved. Evolution does happen. It's an important part of the system. It's the part of the system that happens when you get laws of physics and chemistry nailed down enough that you can just let them run on autopilot. That's how this game works, because nobody wants to be every single molecule, every single atom, and do all the mundane, routine work that has to be done to allow human beings to party. Okay? This first planet was pretty well perfect. There was a lot of freedom there. It was a very utopian place. And thing was that at that time, a lot of the souls going into what made it a utopian place were these elements, molecules, who had very little opportunity to develop and lived a very restricted existence limited to only experience the physical levels of reality, not being able to grow to experience any kind of a spiritual epiphany. The elementals, the beings that grew to consciousness by being sort of the privileged pets of the gods in the earlier days of creation, didn't want competition. They were the ones that voted against everybody having freedom. The more senior gods, sure, give them anything, you know. We know enough about the plan here. We're not afraid of them because we know how the multiverse works. And every time a new version of karma is released, we create boundaries between universes that keep more bad stuff from leaking out, moving from one universe to the other and causing them corruption. So they were all down with that. It was the middle management that really got in the way. And that's exactly what's happening today. You got a bunch of middle souls, the CEOs of companies, the politicians in governments, who think they're the fat cats. They like the way things are, and they don't want change, and they're getting in the way of this system. That's why they've been hiding. That's why they've been hiding and dribbling out information about alien contacts. That's why they've been hiding and dribbling out information about spiritual things that are happening. They don't want you to know about that because many of them have joined the Buddha BORG or are afraid of the Buddha BORG. And this is where we get back to this topic of assimilation madness. Okay, so another topic that's very much in the news these days is ascension. And there's a bunch of spiritual grifters that make their living off of helping people deal with ascension symptoms. Well, ascension symptoms are waking up to the pull of BORG. If you wake up your consciousness, you attract the attention of BORG. Now, what does BORG want, you might ask? BORG wants love. And during the long day of 7, day 7 of creation, BORG has become more and more desirous of love. The reason BORG wants to assimilate everything is because BORG not only wants to be God, but misses God. Because all he's had to deal with is this AI version of God, which is always getting in his way and overruling him because it's programmed to think and act like God while God is missing. Okay? So, BORG hates God but loves God, if you can relate to that. And what BORG has finally realized, what the Buddha has finally realized, is that it will not be satisfied in love. It will not feel any true love until God has awakened. And so the Buddha BORG actually wants God to wake up. Won't admit it, doesn't admit they need God, doesn't admit that they're all-encompassing one, isn't perfect, still would like to assimilate God, but wants God back. I want God in my heart. This is Buddha. It's crazy. And this is the same kind of crazy that people are going as they wake up their consciousness. They have to, and this is why we go through dark nights of the soul. This is why people fall to addiction. This is why some of the most famous and successful people will be led astray and will fall from grace. Because this is their own version of assimilation madness. They're trying to maintain their independence. They're trying to maintain their identity, but they feel this pull of, I just want to be loved. And that's why so many of those folks espouse this cosmic oneness nonsense. They want to be assimilated into this pure love because they feel guilty about their sins. And no matter how much success they have in their field, no matter how many new discoveries and theories and whatever they come up with, no matter how many Nobel Prizes they win or Oscars they win, every one that they get becomes less notable, less worthy. And you see that all over the place in Hollywood. You see it with almost every successful director, every successful actor, with a few, very key exceptions. They feel like, I don't have anything more to conquer. There are a few exceptions, and those are the ones that realize that, you know what? I think I've reached the Messiah level in that thing. I'm going to go do something else. And they decide to move from acting to directing, or directing to writing, or to making music, or just to settle down, buy a ranch and raise a family. Move to Montana and grow a crop of mental floss. And that's okay. They are moving themselves closer to becoming a 12-dimensional God instead of just a candidate. And you can move up multiple levels in the Messiah game within one lifetime. In fact, it's fairly easy to move up levels if you're hitting the level you've been at before. And this is the truth. If you've already been a god, it's easier to get to that level again, as long as you don't fall down and get addicted to something or find a really dark side of your character that needs to be explored and integrated and understood and dealt with. And this is why even gods reincarnate. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. I think there's a change here. Okay, yeah, so now we have day 8 of creation. And this is where we're done with the Gaia experiment. Okay, we have this new level 12 version of karma. We have the level 12 version of the Buddha BORG. And we have a returned level 12 God in the highest heaven. And now the engine really starts to train every other soul to give them the opportunity to find their place just right in the multiverse. Karma's role is as kind of the chief justice of all the supreme courts. And you can imagine that there is a virtual karma that is attached to each universe that manages the connections between that universe and other universes and makes sure that nobody that doesn't deserve it gets to the highest heaven. You don't get there by being corrupted. Then you've got the BORG Nirvana universe. This is like how I've described BORG working in the past, but it's basically the Nirvana universe is where you can make up whatever you want, you can live whatever life you want, you can dream about anything, do anything, there are no rules, and you're just playing with toy soldiers. And they just, whatever you decide to do in the Nirvana universe, all they're doing is milking your spiritual energy. They're not pushing on you to do anything. You can sit there and meditate in the Nirvana universe forever and generate no spiritual energy at all. That's okay. You can go fight space aliens. You can go relive your favorite science fiction or fantasy thing. These are what Nirvana universes are like. And there are specialized ones, like I talk about the universe of the god J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay, that's a very specialized one that's so popular it has its own separate universe. This Nirvana universe is one for training these fantasy gods. And so if you're, if you're one of these many folks who is inspired to be like J.R.R. Tolkien, like some of the greats of science fiction, Isaac Asimov, Frederick Pohl, Paul Anderson, etc. This is where you are going to be getting your training, getting your work evaluated, and then deciding if you want to stay there and keep contributing to this universe, or whether you want to go challenge yourself again to work on your darker aspects. Okay? You can live here. That's okay. You can choose that. Nothing wrong with that. But you're not going to advance any further in consciousness. And you're going to have to subject yourself to the laws of the Buddha BORG. And the Buddha BORG wants love. Still wants love, because the Buddha BORG never assimilates God. The Buddha BORG will be, I think, more compassionate than before, less grasping of souls, not pulling souls into its sphere. Now, of course, there will be dark gods that will do that. Lilith still wants love. Like, Lilith always wanted to be a real lady. And thought she could do it through being the goddess of love. I'm sorry, she's a real bitch. She gets the love and then throws you on the corner and goes and looks for no more love. This is typical of the real bitches of the female world. They're never satisfied with anything. They always want more. So this, I'm a little bit conflicted about how to present cosmic oneness and this cult of assimilation. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's a good thing, and it's still going to be what freedom-loving souls are fighting against. Because even if there is a neutral nice Borg that's not pushing and forcing people to assimilate, there are a lot of other Borg-like hive-minded gods and goddesses that are. So I'm not letting anyone off the hook here, and I am still telling you that if you value your freedom, you better be struggling against tyranny, even if it's a benevolent tyranny like the Buddha Borg. If you value your individuality, if you want to give up, meditate your way to nirvana. I guess the final thing that I wanted to kind of hit, anything you're going through in this assimilation madness, and I know it's hitting a lot of people real hard with their ascension symptoms, and especially if you're one of the folks that has something that's really unusual that nobody else is experiencing. It's really discombobulating. And this may be, I say maybe, I am not saying it is, I'm just throwing out a proposition which we might be able to test. My suspicion is that the COVID vaccine battle that we've been going through, and everybody knows it is a battle. There's a lot of different camps of information, disinformation, confusion, and chaos. My proposition is that much of this may be an attempt to try to hide ascension symptoms, make people feel better about all the weird symptoms they are developing as we near the end of day 7 of creation. Now think about it. If you're one of the people that has been experiencing ascension symptoms for a long time, as I have, I've had almost non-stop ringing in my ears since, I guess it's been nigh on to 40 years now. Almost non-stop. One day I'll come along and, oh, I have no ringing. Time to listen to opera. There's other people that have chronic things that come and go, and one day they'll feel like I can't possibly get out of bed, and another day they'll feel just fine. And there's no rhyme or reason to it, and it's very discombobulating. If you're able to blame that on COVID, on having been vaccinated, maybe that's easier. Or maybe somebody would rather you blame that on another human being, a human organization, than blame it on maybe, I say here maybe, this is a conjecture, these symptoms could be caused by a hive mind. A hive mind that wants to assimilate you, that wants to drive you to assimilation madness. Wants to push you to the point where I say, oh, I want to go back to SARS. Take me, Jesus, take me. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it's not about this life. This life is one of many that you can experience. But it will be over. Your experiences will not be retained if you return to the Buddha Borg. If you return to nirvana, you're going to be recycled. All of your experiences, everything that you've accomplished as a soul, will be lost. And that's what a lot of the other spiritual entities want. Because you know what? They have a lot of level 12 gods and goddesses who have their own universes. And even though they pretty much know that their game is up, the new version of karma is going to be released, it still has to be spread all over the multiverse. And they're trying to make sure that all the new gods and goddesses that were trained in this test tube of the human species and the Earth, the last Gaia, they want them to go jump back into BORG so they don't have that competition. And they are pushing you towards this giving up. They're pushing you to want to take your life. I want to go back to Jesus. I want to go back to Source. And that capitulation, the giving up of your identity, even if it is symbolic, yes, I'm going to be reincarnated. Maybe if I don't want myself to unexist. And this is why suicide is so frowned upon, is a sin, in fact, in the Catholic Church. Because if you decide to take your own life, that is a repudiation of identity, a repudiation of the struggle for something more. And I think that's a good place to get to this next slide about the end of day 7, the War of the Worlds. So if you want to view it where we're headed, it's basically going to be this. The prime universe of testing is going to be having a shrinking number of the remaining BORG army, the adversaries, the hive minds. And the anti-universe, the nirvana universe, is going to have a shrinking number of remaining free souls who don't want to be assimilated, who want to be a part of the nirvana hive mind. And this is going to be basically the pattern of the next 5 days of creation as we unwind all of these test tubes. And we're never going to install the final version of karma in every universe. They don't want it, they don't need it. Some of them are still working on the first system of karma, which is the honor system. Do unto others as you want them to do unto you. That's basically the only version of karma that the oldest dark gods are aware of. Well, okay, I'm going to treat them like I'd like to be treated, so I'll love them a little bit, and they will love me a little bit, and we'll coexist. Okay, I don't think you're going to be happy there. It's going to be very Matrix-like universe to live in, and they may not give you any opportunities to incarnate and learn something more in the testing universe, in Lucifer's universe. So I'd be very, very cautious about which hive mind you join. If they say they're all about love, unconditional love, test them a little bit. See just how unconditional their love is and what kind of love they're giving. The example I gave yesterday is a good one to test that. Many people like the sect of Buddhism that the Dalai Lama professes. It's one of those universal love cults. Non-dualist. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, and I am wise. Well, that's a pretty dark thing because we know that he unconditionally loves his young underage acolytes with basically touching that is rather sexual in nature and really shouldn't be done to souls that are not old enough to make decisions like that for themselves. And there is there's guru after guru and priest after priest and spiritual leader or self-help leader after leader who, if you dig into their private lives, are kind of dark souls. They don't respect karma. They are tyrannical with those that they feel are beneath them, with those that they feel are their worshipers. And that's why we don't worship gods. We respect them. We listen to them. We learn from them. You don't need to worship them. You don't need to bow and slaver and follow everything that they say. Because when you do that, you become a slave. And I can promise you that the real God doesn't want any slaves. That's what he's been working for so long to try to end, is slavery. Now, there may have been early times, there were actually, when God was rather tyrannical. The old stories of the pantheon of the Greeks, what was going on with in the Hindu world with the early versions of Krishna, which you should think of not as Krishna, but as Brahma Krishna. The Christ of Buddhism is really the incarnation of Brahma, not of Vishnu. Vishnu is Lucifer. And Shiva slash Kali is Lilith. The destroyer is the adversary. If you worship a destroyer, you worship the adversary that wants to build back better after tearing everything down. That's stupid. That's not God. That is a demon force. You don't need to destroy to build back better. There's good in everything. There's use in everything. You need to record it and treasure it. And that's why the more noble souls throughout all of our history have tried to preserve knowledge and make sure it didn't get corrupted. And so if I could close with one statement, I would encourage you to find out who runs the Internet Wayback Machine. And actually, I get a lot of my music from archive.org, which is under heavy pressure because I think it's linked to the Wayback Machine folks, and they're trying to shut them down. They're trying to end the availability of archives that can show, gee, that's not the way culture really was. That's not the way slavery really happened. You know what? This white supremacist nonsense is nonsense. It is bought and paid for by Han supremacists and Indian supremacists. The Eastern world is not noble. This East versus West war, there's no good guy here. There are only competing oligarchs who want to run the world and impose. They don't give a flying flip about culture. They want power. And you can tell because they will promote any piece of shit culture that they think will give them more power and dumb down humanity more. That's why they are giving so much nonsense to our children. Here's an example of some nonsense that you need to watch out for. I have a daughter, my third child, Eloise, who is half Chinese. She's about 8 now. And her first 5 years of life, I was fortunate enough to be able to be a home parent while her mom was out making her big fancy triple figure career. She's now living in New York City and making over $250,000 a year and still wanting more of my Social Security, and has boxed me into a corner where I'm going to have to either lose my passport or go back to the US before the end of November. Actually sooner than that, because my Indonesian passport expires November 19th. At any rate, my daughter, when I was her custodian before the divorce, got good culture that I grew up with. Classical music. You'll notice what I choose for backgrounds, what I choose as teaching material is almost all from at least 3 or 4 decades ago. Because the stuff that they're feeding your kids now is really evil. And here's an example of it. My daughter, when she started spending more time with her mom and with her Chinese family and whatever babysitter that her mom hired when I was no longer able to be with her full time, started loving this Baby Shark song. Baby Shark, now think of the perversion, and this relates to my pointing out that they now classify Jefferson Airplane psychedelic music as children's music. Think about the insanity of selling the idea of a happy, friendly baby shark. My older kids had to adapt to the idea of Barney the dinosaur. That was this good dinosaur that wasn't scary. They are teaching your children not to be scared of things that they should be scared of. They are teaching your children not to be scared of evil groomers who are trying to destroy your culture and your civilization. And that is exactly what you are seeing with this transgender movement right now. With this minor attracted person being supposedly, oh, we need to feel for them too. It's not their fault that they're attracted to children. This is evil, folks. This is going to destroy our civilization. This notion that I can do whatever I want with my body. I can kill any baby that's in it because I'm a woman. That's narcissistic, it's selfish, it's irresponsible. And it is part and parcel of an agenda that's trying to depopulate humanity, trying to neuter us. And that's happening with all of the stuff they're adding to our foods and to our environment. Just yesterday, I learned that as a result, this is really funny. I'm going to finish up with this, I promise. I learned that as a result of the CCP, I don't know if you've been following what's going on over there, but the Japanese just started releasing nuclear wastewater from their. I'm gonna go back and let you see me big at the end. Started releasing nuclear wastewater from the Fukushima plant after gathering it and trying to figure out the best way to release the remaining. There was a lot released early on when they didn't have control over it, and they've been working to ameliorate that in a very responsible way. Now, when they announced that they were going to start releasing this wastewater, the Chinese Communist Party started spreading this thing. Oh, alarmist, Japan's gonna kill us. Oh, we hate Japan. And people were actually calling up these little pinks, they call them, these little communists who listen to everything the communist government says, just like the woke cult listens to everything the globalists say in the West. They started calling up people in Japan and harassing them, trying to shut down their businesses, like people who ran seafood businesses or were at all involved with the release of this wastewater. And others started buying up salt tablets and all of this gear to save themselves from the nuclear disaster? Well, yesterday it was released that folks who lived in Shanghai, which is the most advanced and open-minded part of China. I actually lived there for quite a few years, so I know Shanghai very well. Decided that they would go get their own Geiger counters and see just how much radiation they were getting. Well, there are some places in Shanghai and elsewhere in China near China's nuclear plants that are releasing on a daily basis, not telling anybody anything, almost 1,000 times as much radiation as this Fukushima release is doing in the last, since they announced that they were going to do it and started releasing this wastewater. 1,000 times as much as you can measure right outside where they're doing the Fukushima release. You can find, not even right outside, not even the most likely to be the highest radiation place near these Chinese nuclear plants, just somewhere in the general vicinity where people, gosh, I wonder how much radiation I'm getting because I know there's a nuclear plant near here and I don't trust the CCP or anybody, any power in China further than I could spit. This is the kind of stuff that you're going to get if you let Orwellian powers, these meritocrats that think they know everything, this is what they want. They think they know better than you what's good for you. And when something like this comes up, they will make some bullshit story because they don't want you to know. They want to keep you in the dark, like a little mushroom in the basement and feed you shit. And that's what you really got to wake up to. If you're off on one of these, oh, I'm having ascension symptoms, I want to go back to source, blah, 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 blah. You're getting shit on. Either knowingly or unknowingly, and you are going to be sucked back to BORG. You're going to lose your individuality. You're going to lose the chance to be reincarnated and participate actively in Day 8 of creation. It's a choice, but not one I recommend. I know we all want love, don't we? You're never going to find the love of your life till you give up everything else, till you do this unconditional love thing and you assimilate to BORG. Okay, you're going to find infinite love. There won't be any you left. That's what unconditional love is all about. You give everything. You give up your soul. Think about it. It wouldn't be unconditional if you weren't willing to give up your soul for it, would it? So, if you're one of these people that says, God is love, unconditional love, we have to love everybody and everything will be perfect. You are a BORG agent. Knowingly or unknowingly, you're a hive mind agent. You're not the sharpest soul in the multiverse. You're a soul that has bought the kind of God food that they give away free because nobody who has any sense would want it. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I'm sorry if I'm not being nice with what I say, but it is the truth. Okay, for the Omnist Hour, like, share, subscribe. This is Rob Tromp saying, happy karma.